18. We don't have anybody in studio today. We're going to be taking phone calls. If you want to call in and ask a question, the number here is area 818-850-7784. You're welcome to text me. My cell phone is 818-744-9827. I can't answer the phone while I'm on the air, but if you have a question, you want to send it in, feel free. I actually received one a few minutes ago from somebody asking me about the media and asking me about the media spin on some of the celebrity cases. And one of the things that I've said on numerous occasions is that the media really has, everybody is trying to look for what they call their hook. I had a conversation with some people I know in the media before, and everybody wants to find something different, so they tend to put their own little spin on it, something that causes their story to make more headlines and more news, make the front page more than the next guy. And what's interesting is that follow-up question was on the media is whether or not celebrities, how celebrities are treated in the media, and whether or not they're treated I don't want to say correctly, but the way they're treated through the courts and by the courts and by the prosecutors. And the bottom line is there's a classic example in Michael Jackson. First of all, we had a gag order, so we weren't allowed to talk to the media, which frankly I enjoyed during the trial because I don't want to be bothered by the media trying to do your job. But in Jackson, the gag order, none of the reporters were really paying attention, and there was a woman. She calls herself Aphrodite Jones. I believe her name is Diane Brown, but she calls herself Aphrodite Jones. And she was writing a book about Michael Jackson and the trial, and she was talking about how Michael was guilty, and she was going on television, every other day and hanging out with Diane Dimond, and they were always talking about how Michael Jackson is guilty. And then, of course, when the acquittal came down, she had to change her posture because nobody's going to buy a book about somebody who didn't do something. And then she wrote a book, ended up coming out with a book called The Michael Jackson Conspiracy. And now all of a sudden, Michael didn't do anything. It's a big conspiracy. They were out to get him the entire time. And that's sort of typical of the media, of wanting to put their own little spin on it or trying to find something, their little hook that's different, something that sets their story aside from the next person. I don't know that the media treats anybody any differently. Clearly, you're guilty until proven innocent. It's just an issue of how many different people show up at the time of the trial to sit there and watch the trial and comment on your case. I don't think that anything that's in the media, even though somebody's not a celebrity, and I've had numerous cases that were in the media, people that were not celebrities. And it's just an issue of the media, again, trying to find something that they can latch onto, and then doing what they want to do. So I don't know if that actually answers your question. But our call-in number, again, is area 818-850-7784. If you have any questions. Tanya from Chicago asked me how I became interested in PI work. I think it was just one of those things that I fell into. Was one of those issues at the time that I had graduated from high school and was going to college and going in to become a police officer, studying what was then called administration of justice. Today is called criminology. It was not as widespread as it was as it is today back in 1974. And okay, Mr. Mesereau is calling. Decline. It was not as widespread as it was as it is today. Every college has a criminology unit, and again, it's not a matter of getting interested. It's just a matter of there weren't that many people doing it, so you were sort of limited in how you were able to do it, and how much experience you were able to get and the training you were able to get. Because again, a lot of the sciences, in fact, DNA. Didn't actually even exist. It clearly existed, but it wasn't a test that was available back then. Computers weren't even, a personal computer wasn't even around back then, so you didn't have the computer forensics. You didn't have the DNA testing. There's a lot of things that have changed through the years, and again, of course, obviously, it's one of those things that you have to stay on top of. I've been appointed on numerous occasions. I've been acknowledged and appointed as a cell tower expert. That's sort of a dying science. It was very big for a while when cell phones became prevalent. and cell towers were able to put somebody into a specific location in an area. They're not able to pinpoint somebody. And then in 2010, there was a law that was ultimately passed that phone companies actually have to start maintaining records on GPS coordinates of individual cell phones, so that if somebody calls, for example, 911, and that 911 call, again, the issue was back then is there was a young girl that was kidnapped and called 911 but wasn't able to speak, and they weren't able to actually locate the phone until after she was found, and she had been killed by the time she was found. And so the new law went into effect as of 2010 that all phones have to have GPS coordinates. So when you place a call, they're going to know exactly where your phone is, or at least, as they say, within 10 meters. And those records are now being maintained, not for an extensive period of time, but law enforcement can now go in and serve a search warrant, and they can determine exactly where the person was, as opposed to a cell tower, which puts somebody in a potential radius of maybe 1.5 miles to 2 miles from the actual tower, again, dependent on the tower strength. There's a lot of factors. So the bottom line is, what got me interested, I just like investigation. I like law enforcement. I know how difficult it is. I think it sort of changes from day to day. It's not the same thing over and over and over. Although I can say now, after about 40 years, it kind of is the same thing over and over and over. Again, I hope that answers your question. Okay, Timmy from Seattle is preparing a retirement and wants to make a break with his past business relationship and ties with anybody. Is it possible to become anonymous? Great question. Okay. Impossible to become anonymous? I wouldn't say it's impossible, but there are ways to do it. And it's not an uncommon question. Interestingly, there's a law in California, and again, I can only speak for California. If you're a convicted felon, you actually cannot change your name legally. If you're a convicted felon, and when I say legally, you can change your name if you get married. That's sort of an accepted. But if you are in prison and you get out of prison and you want to completely change your ID, you actually cannot do that, because, again, people that are either registered sex offenders or people who are on parole, or people who have, believe it or not, there's more than just registered sex offenders. There's registered drug offenders. There's registered arson offenders also. And you have to maintain a reporting scenario with law enforcement. And so, again, under certain circumstances, you can't change your ID. But one thing that I have told many people to do is to not go buy a car. I know that sounds ridiculous, but most agencies, whether they're law enforcement, whatever, they track you by your Social Security number now, even though it specifically says on your Social Security card not to be used for identification, but people obviously do. If you go into a car dealership and you make up an address, go down the street from your house and find an empty lot, figure out what the address would be from the house across the street, and you go into a car dealership and you say, I want to buy a car, and you have them run your credit report and you incorporate that address as your new address. Again, they're not going to argue the point with you. They want to sell you a car. So you go in there and you give them your Social Security number, you fill out an application, even though you don't really want to buy the car. Use that address, and that sort of changes everything within the system. It pushes your old existing address down in a way, and then the new address that you incorporate becomes the current address. Obviously, there's nothing there, but until somebody physically goes out and looks for it, that obviously, and then, either set up a business or a corporation or whatever the case may be, you can start registering your cars to that. Same thing with the house. Property taxes and property records are actually public record, and I think that's pretty much anywhere in the United States. So if you transfer ownership, if you set up a trust, a lot of people will call it the so-and-so trust. But if you transfer your house into a trust, give it some other name, again, then it makes it significantly more difficult to find. So anyway, I hope that answered your question. Thanks, Timmy. We're going to take our first break. Again, 818-850-7784 if you want to give us a call.
NBC Talk Radio, KCAA 1050 AM.
Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you always tired and worn out? Is it affecting your work and personal life? Well, South Pacific Sleep Lab can help you out. South Pacific Sleep Lab provides a personal study of your sleep patterns. With their trained specialists, they will diagnose your sleep habits and will give you a prognosis for getting a great relaxing night of sleep. South Pacific Sleep Lab has locations throughout Southern California, including Fontana, and will provide transportation to any of their locations at no cost to you. To find out more, give them a call at 844-SAD-5050. That's 844-SAD-5050. South Pacific Sleep Lab. Start resting easy and sleeping sound today.
Hi, my name is Phil Grandy, philsgang.com. Most people would love to be in the stock market, but they're scared not being in. They're scared about not getting out in time. Well, that is over because now you can join Phil's Gang and my stock video program and follow me with specific stock on the video, and you will be out in time.
Find out more at philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG. That's 877-600-4264. Why pay thousands of dollars for a weekend seminar when for only $39.95 a month? philsgang.com provides all the daily market investing information you need to make profits in the stock market. With over 40 years of investing experience, only Phil Grandy and the philsgang.com team provide daily live investing webinars, up-to-the-minute market updates, all the investing educational videos you can imagine. Don't hesitate to learn, invest, and make profits. Go to philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG, 877-600-4264.
Bye-bye sailing, no more sailing.
Okay, we're back again. You're listening to All Things P.I. with Scott Ross. You are welcome to call us at area 818-850-7784. Send me a text. My cell phone is 818-744-9827. I received a text. Somebody asked me about pursuing a PI career. That's kind of interesting. I can only speak for, and the qualifications, I can only, again, speak for California. But private investigators in California require 3 years of experience working under an existing, somebody with an existing private investigator's license. And they require 6,000 hours. It's a combination. The theory being that if you're working full-time for 1 year, you're working 2,000 hours a year. So that being said, the California Bureau of Collective and Investigative Services requires that you have some form of documentation, some form of proof to indicate that you've actually been working in the cases that you've been working on. They're not asking for specifics. You don't have to provide names, but they want to know that you're actually involved in real experience. Interestingly, it used to be that just being a police officer would enable somebody to get a license. That is no longer the case. And then at the end of that 3-year period, the individual for whom you're working signs off on your license. You then have to take a test. The state of California has you take a test. It's sort of interesting because some states actually have what's called reciprocal enforcement. There was a period of time I was up in the state of Washington, and all they wanted to see was proof that I had a license for more than the 3 years that they required. I think we have a caller. Caller, are you there? Want to go ahead?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Is anybody there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hello?
You're on the air.
Can you hear?
Oh, yeah, I can barely hear you.
Okay. So.
Yeah, I've got a question. I have a pending lawsuit of a sort. I have a workers' comp case, and actually think I'm being followed. And I mean, what do I do about that? I mean, I recognize this car in different places, and it just seems a little odd to me. It's a little unnerving.
Interesting. Yeah. Actually, the insurance companies, as a regular, the actual term for it is called sub rosa. Insurance companies do have a regular practice, especially work comp, of following people. How long has this been going on? Do you know?
I'm not really sure. It doesn't seem to be going on at the moment. It had been for, I don't know, several days about a week ago, and I haven't noticed the same vehicle around. Doesn't mean there's another one, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah, again, it's one of those things that eventually, and especially in a tight neighborhood, I don't know where you're at, but in an area where the car is going to be sitting for any kind of elongated period of time, and somebody may or may not recognize it. It doesn't mean they're not there. It means that they tend to swap out vehicles. That actually sort of ties into what I was just talking about, because when these companies, these large companies, they get these contracts with insurance companies, and it doesn't have to be for a work comp injury. It's not uncommon for if somebody has a slip and fall accident at a large grocery store, that they will send somebody out to really try and determine if that individual is injured. And this is a situation where the work comp company almost always does it. Can I ask what stage your lawsuit is at?
It's really hard to tell. I would imagine it's kind of at the getting close to the end. I think they're beginning to start making grumblings about settling. So.
Well, and as the affected area, whatever the injury is, when you settle out a work comp, and obviously I'm sure you have an attorney, they have to give you some form of a lump settlement, and that settlement is based on the sort of percentage of loss of use of whatever the injured item is, whatever you want to call it. If it's an arm, if it's a leg, whatever. Yeah. So if it as it winds down, the surveillance is probably going to kind of pick up the tempo. Number one, if you're really injured, it's not an issue. There's nothing to hide. But as I was about to say, the sad part is these companies get these contracts with these insurance carriers, and they go out and hire these private investigation companies to, $40, $50 an hour for surveillance, and then they hire these kids, and for like $15, $18 an hour, maybe 20, I don't know. But not a lot of money for what they're doing, and they end up shipping them off to places like, Palmdale or Las Vegas or whatever, where it's 100 and something degrees, and they end up sitting in a car all day, and they lead them to believe that those hours that they're sitting there are construed to be part of an investigation, and that those hours actually, I don't know if you heard before, we were talking about the hours that you have to get a license. And then ultimately, they hire these people, and these people are willing to do this because, again, they lead them to believe that time is going to count toward your PI license. And after 3 years, so they end up getting 3 years worth of work out of some kid. They get 6,000 hours out of that kid, and then they ultimately find out that those hours are not determined to be an investigation that's acknowledged by the state, and they do not count toward your license, and you've just pretty much thrown away 3 years trying to get a job. So,
wow, that's pretty rotten. But I do have. I'm also curious. I'm actually scheduled for surgery. I mean, these guys have actually acknowledged that I need surgery, and yet they're still doing this. It just seems really kind of odd to me.
Yeah, that actually is kind of bizarre that they feel you have a surgery. Certainly no doctor is going to perform an unnecessary surgery. They feel you need to have some form of surgery. The only thing I can say is that it's potentially that they were one of two things. Either they were backlogged and didn't get around to you, or they have nothing else to do, so they put somebody out there to milk the insurance company. I don't know who it is, obviously, but yeah, it's not uncommon. And again, I think it's an amazing waste of time, but unfortunately there is fraud out there. It's all over the place. If it wasn't doing criminal defense work, I wouldn't have a job. And the bottom line is, again, obviously you're injured, you wouldn't be getting surgery. And I don't really know what to tell you about them. Go about business as usual and just recognize that you're being watched. That's really about all you can do.
Well, great. Thank you very much.
And feel bad for that person. And hopefully someday somebody will tell them the truth. Okay?
I feel bad that they were sitting out in that car for so long in the heat. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of my point, but I do appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. So I just got another text. This is funny. Roger from Sacramento says he has a crazy ex-girlfriend named Sally that's making his life miserable. How can I make her stop? The obvious is a restraining order. I don't know what that means by having a crazy ex-girlfriend. Again, the most obvious is a restraining order. The second is again, depending on where you live, and the circumstances, I would suggest getting one of those. I forget the name of the camera, but they have those cameras now that you can get, attach them to your cell phone, and so you can sort of monitor them. I know the actual cameras will set off the cell phone and alert you if somebody is outside, walking around, if somebody's going to vandalize your car. And again, the problem with restraining orders is it's sort of the initial step. Restraining orders, by the way, depending on your financial situation, can be obtained for free. You can actually petition the court to absorb the cost if you can't go out and hire an attorney or have the filing fees, depending on your situation. And again, temporary restraining orders are pretty easy to get your hands on. It's the permanent restraining order. You have to have some form of proof. So it's one of those things. If you have the ability to get a video camera in front of your place, keep records and keep track of somebody coming by, and it happens unfortunately all the time, more times than not. I hope that answered your question. So let's see if we have anything else. Back to the PI career. Let me get back to that real quick. So what I was saying is different states have different regulations. Obviously, you have to go online and figure out what they are. Oregon, for example, up until I think a couple of years ago, didn't even require anything. You just basically called yourself a private investigator and bought some business cards. They didn't require any licensing. I think that has since changed when we were doing Cosby. And if somebody has any questions on either Cosby or Blake or Jackson, whatever, feel free to give me a call. But when we were doing Cosby, I had to go to Pennsylvania, and I had to get a license in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania being a commonwealth, it's kind of interesting, I didn't know this, that the Commonwealth means that the counties, each individual county sort of sets their own standards and rules. So I had to get licensed in Montgomery County. It's like a weapons permit in the sense that it's issued by the county, but it's a statewide permit. So I could go anywhere in the state of Pennsylvania. I had to show, again, proof of some form of experience, and I used my California license was actually issued in 1983, so I basically gave them that, and then I had to get letters from attorneys saying that I knew what I was doing. There was no testing. I actually had to appear in front of a judge. The judge asked me a few questions, and they issued the license. That was it. So again, every state is going to be different depending on where you're at. Obviously, you have to check and find out. And then I also know that in states like North Carolina, they have a 30-day reciprocal enforcement agreement that my license in California, I can go in there and I can work up to 30 days. Interestingly, I've read the law, and it doesn't really isolate or identify what qualifies 30 days. It doesn't tell you that you can go in for 30 days at a time, or can you go 30 days or 29 days, cross the border, and then go back and then have another 30 days, or is it over a single year period? It really is very vague. It doesn't give that kind of information. And interestingly, too, in North Carolina, and recently because of my contact with David Rudolph, who's the attorney in The Staircase on Netflix, and if you haven't had a chance to watch it, I suggest everybody watch it. But interestingly, North Carolina does not have a reciprocal enforcement. They don't authorize people with licenses in Tennessee, which I thought was sort of interesting. They have on their website, they have an entire list of states that they just don't acknowledge. And I for the life of me, I couldn't tell you why that is. But anyway, so let's see what else we got. With the state of California, the thing that I've always been sort of upset with is they don't have what's called a continuing education program. So once you're licensed, all you have to do is send in the money. I actually went and met with a client yesterday. I won't get into the details of it or the individual, but I will talk about it when we come back from our break. And this individual hired somebody who was not licensed, who alleged to be a private investigator, and subsequently suffered the consequences of hiring somebody who just didn't know what they were doing. So give us a call, 818-850-7784. You are listening to All Things Private Eye. We'll be back after this break. Thank you.
NBC Talk Radio, KCAA 1050 AM.
Hi, my name is Phil Grandy, philsgang.com. Most people would love to be in the stock market, but they're scared, not being in, they're scared about not getting out in time. Well, that is over because now you can join Phil's gang and my stock video program and follow me with specific stock on the video, and you will be out in time.
Find out more at philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG. That's 877-600-4264. Why pay thousands of dollars for a weekend seminar when for only $39.95 a month, philsgang.com provides all the daily market investing information you need to make profits in the stock market. With over 40 years of investing experience, only Phil Grandy and the philsgang.com team provide daily live investing webinars, up-to-the-minute market updates, all the investing educational videos you can imagine. Don't hesitate to learn, invest, and make profits. Go to philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG, 877-600-4264.
Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you always tired and worn out? Is it affecting your work and personal life? Well, South Pacific Sleep Lab can help you out. South Pacific Sleep Lab provides a personal study of your sleep patterns. With their trained specialists, they will diagnose your sleep habits and will give you a prognosis for getting a great relaxing night of sleep. South Pacific Sleep Lab has locations throughout Southern California, including Fontana, and will provide transportation to any of their locations at no cost to you. To find out more, give them a call at 844-SAD-5050. That's 844-SAD-5050. South Pacific Sleep Lab. Start resting easy and sleeping sound today.
Hi, okay, we're back. We have a caller. Caller, you there? Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Hi, go ahead.
Yes, I had a question about the case with Michael Jackson.
Okay.
If there will be any more private investigations looked into that matter, because there's a lot of people out there that feel that he was murdered by that guy.
You're talking about Conrad Murray.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. I actually worked for Conrad Murray, with the attorneys for Conrad Murray, so I'm very familiar with the case. And, it's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic that the judge in the case is actually up on appeal right now. And, my opinion, of course, is that the judge made a tactical mistake. They allowed Arnie Klein, who was Michael's doctor, going back to the late 80s. Arnie Klein, they allowed his medical records to come in. And did you follow the case closely?
Yeah, I followed it right up to where Conrad Murray was, where they had him on trial. Mm-hmm. There were some things that looked like that he didn't do, and then some things that looked like that he did. But there are many cases out there. I was also going to ask about, do you handle anything as far as like private investigative work for veterans that are looking to file like tort claims or anything like that?
Sure. I do all kinds of stuff.
You do?
Yeah. You have to recognize, though, when you talk about filing claims, federal claims have to be filed within, I believe it's 180 days. There are exceptions that you'd have to talk to an attorney about. You file your lawsuit once the claim has actually been rejected by the governmental agency. It's not listed to the feds, or it's not just the feds. It's if you're suing a county, state, whatever. But yeah, I do all kinds of work. But you actually, and it's interesting too, because that was a question I just got, do I work for individuals or strictly with attorneys? Because there's an attorney-client privilege, and not being an attorney, I don't have that privilege with the client. So
yes, sir.
Unless I'm brought in by an attorney. So I typically don't like to do a lot of work with individuals if there's a lawsuit that's going to be pending. I advise people to contact an attorney, have the attorney contact me. And even if the attorney doesn't represent you, just the fact that the call came from an attorney, any communication that I then would have with that individual, you in this case, whatever the case may be, would then still maintain that privileged communication. Does that make sense?
My next question would be, you hear many people say that, the public defender is in bed with the prosecution. Is that true?
No.
And then my follow-up question to that would be, are you allowed to file a Nelson hearing if you have a federal case? And would that if you filed a Nelson hearing, would that affect your federal case in any way whatsoever?
Well, two things. I can tell you that no, the DA's office and the PD's office rarely get along. It's sort of an individual, whatever you want to call it. But I've been in court on numerous occasions where, the public defender's office has even asked the district attorney's office to make a copy of something, and they have flat out refused to do it. They are not in bed together. That I can assure you. And in fact, typically their relationships, you like to think that they maintain a professionalism. We'll wait for the ambulance to go by. But no, typically they really have little to nothing in common. They really don't want anything to do with each other. It
may seem that way from the defendant's perspective, I would imagine sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. And unfortunately, you get these TV shows that show the public defender and the prosecutor sitting down saying, I'll plead out this one if you give me a walk on that one, and that just doesn't take place. That's just idiotic. It's the closest they come to having any kind of communication is sitting down and working out calendaring issues. Again,
I guess I should have told you, because I myself I'm a veteran, but I've been in this pre-trial supervision for about 7 months, and I've done exactly what the prosecution has wanted. But it kind of disturbed me that the public defender wanted, after seeing the forensic psychologist for only 1 hour, but I've been seeing another psychiatrist for the past 3 months, that the public defender was going to say that I was going to have a second opportunity to look over the final draft, and they went ahead and turned the thing into the prosecution, and there were some things in there that I didn't want in there. But after having a lengthy debate with Mike, they're letting me change a few things. But that's where that question with the Nelson hearing came into play, because they were telling me, well, if you go down and file a Nelson hearing, the judge is just going to look at you and say, well, let's just take this case to trial. When I was told by another person that, being that it's a federal case, I could file a Nelson hearing, and it wouldn't affect my case whatsoever.
Okay.
So I don't know who to believe, or
sure,
it becomes a little complex. I'd like to hear your thought on that.
Well, two things. Number one, I am not familiar with the Nelson hearing. That's a federal statute. I've heard it.
Well, I've been told that you can only file Nelson hearing if it's a state matter.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it. And when you say state matter, I don't know what state you're calling from. So, are you calling from California?
No, I was in California. I'm down here in Florida visiting right now.
Okay.
I've been listening on the internet.
Okay, but I'm saying I don't know what a Nelson hearing is. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it. But
a Nelson hearing is, if you're not satisfied with your public defender, you can file a Nelson hearing and go in front of the judge and request another public defender, I guess.
Okay, in California, that's called a Marsden hearing, but that's fine. I get it. Same thing.
It's called a what?
Marsden, M-A-R-S-D-E-N. And the judge will clear the courtroom, and you get to go up there and with your attorney, and you get to tell the judge, this attorney's not doing this, that, and the other thing. But what you were talking about previously is reciprocal discovery. The prosecution has to turn over under state or federal. It's Brady versus Maryland. They're required to turn over inculpatory and exculpatory information. That's the way it works. But if the defense is going to use something, or they have some reports that have been turned over to them, and if they're going to call an individual as a witness, they have to they're required by law to turn over the report 30 days prior to trial. So if you're getting ready for a trial, and a lot of times they'll do it out of courtesy significantly.
Well, in my case, I'm not going to trial. It was supposed to be in pre-trial diversion, but it's actually pre-trial supervision.
Okay, and that means if you're in any kind of pre-trial supervision, the only thing I can think of is that there's some kind of a plea deal that's been taken. Otherwise, there's no requirement for supervision.
Keep my nose clean, and take a monthly urine test.
Yeah. So you've pled out, you've taken a deal, but I'm saying you can't. Your case is essentially done. You had to sign, and again, if you're in California, you go through when you do a plea deal, you sign what's called a TAHL waiver. It's spelled TAHL, and that sort of outlays everything you've been advised that when you take this deal, you can no longer call witnesses, you can no longer have subpoena power. You're giving up your right to a jury trial. You're giving up. You may have to say something to the court. You're giving up your Fifth Amendment, and you have to say, yes, I did this, and then you get diversion. You go through and complete the program. But steps of diversion, if part of it is seeing some kind of a professional monitoring, whether it's psychiatric treatment, whatever the case may be, or blood monitoring, you have to go in and do a urine test. All of those results, you get periodic results. Those get turned over to the court, and again, that's part of your agreement. It has nothing to do with your attorney's not trying to.
Yeah. I wonder why, like when the veteran gets in trouble or falls on hard times, that this, the side of the story for the veteran is like, if your case is not going to trial, then they don't want to hear your side of the story. It's like you can't rebuttal whatever the inspector general, and like in my case, I say that the inspector general took my overwhelming emotions of anger and twisted my words around, and that's why I'm in the predicament that I'm in. They never used anything on why I got angry, like the VA denied me medical care and agitated me by telling me.
Hang on. And again, I get it, but essentially, while you're sitting there taking your plea agreement, if you turn around and look behind you, there's another 40 people waiting to do the same thing. And so the court only has so much time. They have limited calendars. Ever walk the halls of a courthouse, there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. I'm sure every court is beyond their fire marshal limit. And so they don't have time to do it. But wait, hang on a second. But when you took your plea agreement, your judge specifically, before you even signed the waiver, your judge specifically said, you understand by taking this deal, you're giving up this, that, and the other thing. Do you specifically remember him doing that, or her?
Sort of. You sign it figuring that that's going to speed up the process to help you get out of trouble.
Well,
but at the same time,
hang on. If you have a public defender, two things. It's not costing you anything to sit there and do it, number one. So if you didn't want to take the deal, you don't have to take the deal. You have to remember that. And by the way, again, I don't know. So this case is out of California?
No, it's over in Florida.
Okay. So again, I certainly can't speak for Florida, but the fact remains that if you don't want to take the deal, nobody made you take the deal. They offered you something that you, at the time, it may have felt would have worked for you. The fact that you're a veteran, thank you very much, by the way, and I respect it, but when push comes to shove, that has no bearing if you're either a veteran.
Yeah, it doesn't. It has no bearing whatsoever. They don't care.
Correct.
If you're trauma or if you're whatever, Afghanistan, it doesn't come into any play whatsoever. But it should in some cases. I guess that's why I'm in the diversion program. But they throw it in my face like, oh, you should feel so lucky because these other people don't have this diversion program. You should feel lucky that you have it. And I just say, well, I think the reason I have it is because I'm a disabled veteran. But there's really no legal help for the veteran when they get in trouble, from what I have noticed or looked up online. And I was wondering if you're looking at anything down the road, or you see anything where they're going to be passing some laws where they're more lenient on disabled veterans or veterans who fall on hard times. Do you see that in the future?
I don't know. I really don't, and it's not something that I follow or would follow. I don't follow potential laws. I only follow things that change because otherwise they have no effect. I would look at the American Disabilities Act because there may be something in there that might actually enable you to use some portion of that or use that for some type of assistance. There may be something that would be granted to you for assistance that might actually help you get through it. My cell phone's 818-744-9827 if you want to send me a text. If you want to contact me afterwards, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. You're certainly welcome to. And call in here as 818-850-7784. Give us a call. Thank you.
NBC Talk Radio, KCAA 1050 AM.
Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you always tired and worn out? Is it affecting your work and personal life? Well, South Pacific Sleep Lab can help you out. South Pacific Sleep Lab provides a personal study of your sleep patterns. With their trained specialists, they will diagnose your sleep habits and will give you a prognosis for getting a great relaxing night of sleep. South Pacific Sleep Lab has locations throughout Southern California, including Fontana, and will provide transportation to any of their locations at no cost to you. To find out more, give them a call at 844-SAD-5050. That's 844-SAD-5050. South Pacific Sleep Lab. Start resting easy and sleeping sound today.
Hi, my name is Phil Grandy, philsgang.com. Most people would love to be in the stock market, but they're scared not being in. They're scared about not getting out in time. Well, that is over because now you can join Phil's Gang and my stock video program and follow me with specific stock on the video, and you will be out in time.
Find out more at philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG. That's 877-600-4264. Why pay thousands of dollars for a weekend seminar when for only $39.95 a month? philsgang.com provides all the daily market investing information you need to make profits in the stock market. With over 40 years of investing experience, only Phil Grandy and the philsgang.com team provide daily live investing webinars, up-to-the-minute market updates, all the investing educational videos you can imagine. Don't hesitate to learn, invest, and make profits. Go to philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG, 877-600-4264.
Okay, hi, we're back. And the gentleman from Florida, I appreciate the call. Part of the problem is that, the public defenders are incredibly overworked, and some of them are great lawyers. There's one in Torrance, Matt Huey, who is one of the best. But the bottom line is that people get caught up in, the attorneys. They handle so many cases, whether they're private attorneys or public defenders. And part of the issue is that they know what's happening and they expect you to know what's happening. And, when you ultimately take a deal, a lot of people try and set those aside later, or they complain. And I think that this was probably the best choice that your attorney felt was for you. Being a veteran, unfortunately, doesn't really have a lot of bearing. I'm sorry to say that it's just one of those things that doesn't change. It's for all defendants. It's for everybody who's been charged. Got another text. You worked on high-profile cases, but what about? Here's about what you're asked to do in those cases. Well, they're all the same. I mean, again, the work is the work. Again, as I was saying, that I met with somebody yesterday who sort of fell victim to the system. And one of the things that I found out sort of before the fact and realized after I went through the paperwork is that this individual actually sort of relied on and had hired a private investigator who, as it turns out, was not licensed. The Department of Collective and I forget what it's called. It's called BSIS, Bureau, I don't know. But it's bsis.ca.gov if anybody wants to visit it. And you can go online and you can confirm or disconfirm whether or not somebody actually has a PI license. And my suggestion was, before you go out and hire somebody, it's the same thing with a contractor. You're not going to go out and hire a contractor that doesn't have a license, that doesn't know what they're doing, that hasn't passed the state's requirements, whatever they may be. And so as a result, this woman hired a private investigator that clearly didn't know what they were doing. There was evidence that could have made a difference in the case, and now I've been contacted to try and reverse the verdict with some new information that, again, clearly was ignored. And again, the bottom line is, I'm not saying I've never missed anything. It's human error, but when push comes to shove, if you don't have somebody that is licensed, and it doesn't mean that just having a license knows what you're doing, but it means you're at least qualified. And so I would urge anybody, if you have a problem, you're going to go out and do something, and you need the services of an investigator, make sure that they have a license. Again, there are guidelines and there's rules, and in fact, unfortunately it's only a misdemeanor to actually practice without a license. I don't know what it is for an attorney, but again, you wouldn't go out and hire an attorney that wasn't licensed by the state of California either. There's really not a lot of difference. One of the things that was interesting in this particular case from yesterday was that there was a series of items that were booked into property. And, again, if you hopefully never get arrested and never see a property sheet, but it'll say miscellaneous note. It'll just say handwritten note, miscellaneous paper. And the bottom line is somebody needs to go down to the property department, pull that out and start looking through it, because you never know what's there. And again, I do that as a regular routine, and I hope all private investigators that are doing, again, any kind of criminal defense work are doing the same thing, where you're going down, you call the officer, you call the detective, you set up a meeting, you go down to the property room, they pull the box, and you just kind of sit there and go through things, and you look to see what's actually there. Because looking at a property sheet and an item that's been booked as miscellaneous piece of paper doesn't really help you when it could be potentially a receipt putting somebody at a different location. Again, a lot of cases that are charged, a lot of people that get arrested don't get arrested when the crime actually takes place. They don't get arrested when it's committed. The police will go out and do an investigation. And then again, you're sort of guilty until proven innocent in spite of what you've learned. And so now you have to determine that I can show that I wasn't at one place or I wasn't at another. And again, it's an issue of cell towers. So for an example, cell towers. So if you're not in a location, you can always ask the detectives, and I've done that on cases before they're filed, to go out and get the cell towers, get the GPS coordinates. And in fact, the phone companies will respond to either a subpoena or a search warrant or a court order. And sometimes you have to use different ones. I can give you an example. T-Mobile will only accept a court order. They won't accept a subpoena. AT&T will take a subpoena. So again, every company has its different thing. And the fact is that you can get the detectives if you're being investigated and haven't been charged, because the GPS coordinates are only maintained for a certain period of time. For what it's worth, I had a death penalty case back in, I think it was 2004, two brothers who were ultimately convicted. One of them, actually, it was a hung jury the first trial, but was convicted in the second trial, and I can say I had nothing to do with the second trial. But the police didn't even attempt to get the cell towers, and back in 2004, I'm sorry, the actual crime was 2002. The trial was in 2004. But the police didn't even attempt to get the cell towers until after 74 days, I believe it was. And back then, the phone company, and I believe it was Singular Wireless, if you remember them, only maintained cell tower records for 55 days, and that was a known fact. And so they didn't bother to go after them because, again, the individual lived in Orange County and the crime took place in LA County. So, when they put that off intentionally, again, that falls under what's called a Trombetta motion or Youngblood motion, that the police are required to maintain and secure and get all evidence. And the fact that they didn't do it made a difference, but unfortunately, the rest of the information was overwhelming. What I'm getting at, though, is that you need to find somebody who actually, again, not just knows what they're doing, but somebody who is licensed, because, you're sort of back to the same issue that if you have an attorney and you're communicating with the client and the person isn't licensed, then there is no attorney-client privilege. Okay, I just received a question from Debbie in San Diego. If you have a case that you feel the defendant is clearly guilty, do you continue to represent the person? Yeah. The sad part is criminal defense is not an issue of innocence or guilt. It's an issue of policing the police. It's an issue of maintaining the integrity of the Constitution. You have laws in place that the police are forced, or I should say the prosecution is forced to actually prove their case. And simply arresting somebody is not proof of guilt. And I've had plenty of people who were arrested for crimes they didn't commit. And I do have my limits. There are some cases that I won't get involved with. But when all is said and done, yeah, it's really not about, the prosecution is all about winning as far as I'm concerned, and that's my personal opinion. So welcome to the First Amendment. But as far as the defense is about upholding the law and making sure that law enforcement does what they do. If somebody's guilty and they've committed the crime, okay, I get it. But it doesn't mean that the police have the right to circumvent reality. They don't have the right to take shortcuts. Law enforcement is required to follow the law. If I find out that somebody did something that they are guilty of, I'm actually under absolutely no obligation to tell law enforcement. And I get clients constantly. I shouldn't even say constantly, but I get clients that confide certain things that we wouldn't want anybody else to know. And excuse me, hence the attorney-client privilege. But when all is said and done, yeah, it's really for us, for the defense, or me anyway. It's not about the guilt, whether or not somebody committed a crime. It's about law enforcement doing their job. I represented a gentleman who was ultimately convicted by an attorney who I think was completely incompetent. He had 3 trials, and the first 2 trials were both hung juries because he had great lawyers. And he was, the allegation was he threw his 4-year-old daughter off a cliff. He didn't do it. It was an accident. I believe in his innocence. I think it was a textbook case of what's called involuntary manslaughter. It's completely reckless to take your 4-year-old daughter up on a cliff and not hang on to her. But when all is said and done, yeah, it was a horrific case. It was terrible. This little girl is now gone, and it's been well over, I think, 15 years since this happened. But it was about making sure that the police did what the police were required to do. And that's always been my main function. And so back to this client that I met with last night, it's an issue of, in her particular case, it's unfortunately an issue of the investigator that she hired did not have a license, really didn't know what he was doing, and didn't do what he was supposed to do. Now, would it have had a profound difference on how the outcome of her case? No idea. But when all is said and done, there's never going to be any way to find out. And that's why I just say over and over and over, no matter who you go out and hire or meet with, unfortunately, when people get arrested, and especially when they're in custody, you're pretty vulnerable. And they tend to sort of take the first thing that comes along. Personally, I will work with an individual, again, depending on the circumstances. But if there's an attorney-client issue, then it has to be done in conjunction with an attorney. It doesn't mean you have to go out and retain an attorney. It just means that I have to be sent out there. So this individual from yesterday, I went out to meet with at the request of an attorney, and the theory was that we now have new evidence. So the theory was that any attempt to do what's called setting aside the verdict or file a motion for new trial, anything that constitutes new evidence that has been brought forward. The idea is, again, the attorney contacted me. So any communication that I had is all privileged communication. And again, that's why I tell people all the time, if you have a question, if anybody wants to contact me, you can reach us at All Things Private Eye, spelled out, All Things Private, Private, next word IEYE, at gmail.com. My personal email is scottross@hotmail.com. You're welcome to use either one. My cell phone is area 818-744-9827. If you have a question, if you are stuck in traffic and just want to have a conversation, you're welcome to give me a call. And again, I just urge people to make sure that whoever you go out and hire, and even if it's the public defenders, incidentally, the public defender's office has their own investigative unit. And in fact, interestingly and entertainingly, Ron Ito, Detective Ito, who was the lead detective in Robert Blake's case, is actually now working with the public defender's office. And I always get a kick out of it. I talk to Ron, I'm still friends with him, and I get a kick out of the fact that he's now doing defense work after being, I think, with LAPD for about 36, 37 years. Anyway, okay, so that's it for this week. Thank you again for listening. Again, allthingsprivateeye@gmail.com if you want to send me a question, or scottross@hotmail.com. Again, cell phone 818-744-9827. Thank you for listening, and we will be back next week. Take care.